So, um, I'm assuming that if you're in the laid off and looking that perhaps you're in a situation where you have been recently laid off, or you're worried that things are looming on the horizon, and that this might be part of your reality in the near future. So I thought I'd go over some tips and tricks to speed up the process of finding that next position, because I know that it's a scary experience. I've been through it myself at times, and now, especially being in this pandemic, it adds a whole new wrinkle to things. But there's still jobs out there, and there's still opportunities. So don't panic. We'll go through some tips and practices to find you a job as soon as possible. So I'm going to just share my screen. Give me a second. Oops, I can't share a screen. I don't know, Erin, can you give me access to sharing a screen, or is that not possible?
Yes, I should be able to. Hold on. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm just gonna, because I'm a firm believer in actually not having a lot of text on slides anyway. It's more just a way of keeping me on track, so I can go on without. So, you know, whether you're laid off, whether you've been fired, whether it's a furlough, you know, it can take a lot of different names and titles, but ultimately what happens is you're unemployed. And oftentimes when you're in this situation, you're starting to worry about things like your finances, and you might be scared that, you know, you're hearing bad things about the economy and the job market, and will I ever find a job? So there's a lot of fear associated with being unemployed, and I'm just here to say, don't panic. Let me see if I can bring this up. Thank you, Erin, for doing that.
Yeah.
So I mean, the key thing is don't panic. And I think sometimes we let fear and panic keep us from being productive and effective. You know, you start panicking, you start getting depressed. It's hard then to focus. It's hard to focus on the strategy, and you get bogged down in some activities that maybe are not as productive as others. So take a deep breath, and don't panic. So let's see if I can find my mouse. You know, when you're doing your job search, there's strategy and then there's tactics. And stop and think about what you want in a strategic way before you start doing the tactics. Because otherwise you can start wasting a lot of time sending out resumes. That's a tactic. Applying for jobs online, that's a tactic. But you might be better served by starting to think very strategically about what it is that you're looking for, what you want, what types of companies, what you're good at, before actually starting to send out those resumes. And then if you've got your strategies set, you might find that then the tactics are going to be more effective. So we'll talk in just a minute about what all that means to think strategically. I do want to say, and I say this all the time, and it's so true, and I know when I was unemployed and looking too, this isn't what I wanted to hear. Don't rely on online applications. Don't just rely on applying for things electronically. This is not the way to find a job. It is not the way to find a job in a perfect economy. It is not the way to find a job in a COVID world. I was actually in a board meeting with our advisory board for the Human Resources Academic Department in the Block School of Management recently. And we had a whole panel of some of the top chief people officers and chief HR officers from companies around the Kansas City area. And the one thing that they said loud and clear is that they're being glutted. Every position that they post, they're being glutted with applicants. And so how do you make yourself stand out when there's thousands, hundreds or thousands of people applying for a job, and they all said it's networking, it's building connections with people, it's getting a referral, it's finding jobs before they get posted. It's not about just submitting your application and then hoping for the best, because it's really hard. If you think about the numbers of it, if there's 1,000 people applying for a job, and at best they're going to bring in 10 for a phone screen, and that's a pretty big, broad phone screen. But let's say optimistically it's 10. That's 990 people that you have to beat out based on just a piece of paper. That's not the best way to find a position. So spend maybe 25% of your time filling out applications, spend 75% of your time networking and talking to people at organizations that you're perhaps interested in. So don't rely strictly on the online applications. And my other bit for getting started is really think about your job search as a job. And minimally, it should be a part-time job, 20 hours a week. And really, if you want to find a job sooner rather than later, think of it as a full-time job where you're spending a lot of time, 40 hours a week or so, actually looking for the job so that you can tighten up that unemployed time frame. So thinking strategically about what it is that you want to do. So what do you want out of your next job? What did you like about your previous job or the job that you're in now? What is it that you don't like? What would you love to get rid of? What would you love to take on in your next role? And these are things to be thinking about now. And then think also, what is it that you're good at? Where do you add value? So maybe what you're good at is managing people. So maybe you're managing people in a higher ed situation, but that being able to manage people, that's not limited to working in the higher ed field or consumer packaged goods. So that's something that's a skill, that's something that you're good at, that's something where you can add value to any number of companies or any number of organizations. So think about what it is that you're really good at, where you think you add value. Is it that you're a great communicator? Is it that you think strategically? Is it that you're a detail person? So what is it that you like about your job? What is it that you're really good at? What do you think that, you know, this is where I make my mark. This is where I stand out. And try and figure out then where might I do that in another setting. And I will say too, you want to think of yourself, you know, people, and I hear this all the time from job seekers, especially the ones that are starting to panic. I'm just applying to anything because I'll take anything because, you know, I can't be unemployed for very long on a financial basis. So I'm just shotgun. When you apply and you present yourself as a generalist, you know, not many companies are hiring generalists. Most organizations, when they're hiring, they're looking for specialists. They're looking for somebody who's good at something that can add a specific value to their organization. So in our panic and our desperation, we think, you know, anything would be good. I can be good at anything. But a jack of all trades isn't necessarily what they're looking for. They're looking for that specialist. So start thinking of yourself as a specialist and how you would market yourself as a specialist. Whether that's I'm a specialist manager in teams to really improve sales, to improve productivity, or if you're thinking of it in I am a specialist project manager. I get things done on time, under budget. I get people all pulling in the right direction. You're a specialist. So think of what your specialty is so that you can really market that. And then Identify what companies you might be interested in. What companies would be needing of what you're good at. What companies are interesting to you, that you value, that you think highly of. A lot of times people come to me and say, I don't know. I don't know what's out there. There's some tools that I love to use, that I use all the time. Book of Lists is published by the Business Journal. It's published every year. You can get access to it electronically. You can get a print copy of it. If you don't have access to it, let me know. We always have a book of lists, and I can either get you a link to an online version. But what the book of lists is exactly that. It's the top fastest growing companies in the Kansas City metro area. It's the top technology companies. It's the top higher ed institutions. It's a list of all of these different types of companies and industries here in the metropolitan area. The book of lists is published for cities across the country. So whether you're thinking you want to stay here in Kansas City, or whether you're thinking you want to move to Denver, most major metropolitan areas have a book of lists. And I think they're great because it's a ton of companies you didn't even know existed, and they might be great companies for you to take a look at. So that's one thing. Kansas City also has a great, phenomenal organization called the Kansas City Area Development Council, the KCADC. So if you type it in to a Google box, KCADC, and they really work with businesses here in the area to improve the economic climate of the area. They work to bring new companies into the area. They work with our existing companies to expand their opportunities. They have a really wonderful website that lists all sorts of different companies by different sectors. Really, really love them. So we're really lucky in Kansas City to have such a great organization like that. So I like using them. Like the Chamber of Commerce is always good. You know what I also do? I when I'm driving around and I see a building with a name at the top of the building, I then go home and do a little research, like, what do they do? I've never heard of them before. It might be a building that I've driven by many, many times, but maybe it's convenient to my home. Maybe it looks like it's a brand new building and they're growing. So sometimes simple things can help you identify potential employers that are out there. Also, it's a good idea to look at something like LinkedIn. Well, it's good to look at LinkedIn for a whole slew of reasons, to be honest. But they have a really good job board. And so look to see who's hiring, and are some of those companies interesting to you. So there's a lot of things that you can do to sort of try and identify what potential employers might be. The reason I like to look at some of the job postings, because if a company has a lot of postings, they're probably doing a lot of hiring, and they're projecting growth. Maybe they're projecting stability here in the next year or so with the whole pandemic. So you can kind of make some assumptions that if you're not seeing any postings, that might be that they're being a little harder hit. If they have lots of postings, then it might mean that they're doing pretty well. So another way to help you identify some of those organizations. Once you get to about 10 to 15, focus on those. Because if you go shotgun, if you're applying to everything, if you're trying to do research on 100 companies, you're not going to be doing very well. You're not going to go very deep into any of those organizations. And once you've identified those companies that you might want to work for, my next piece of advice is to start networking like a mad person. I mean, just go nuts. And networking isn't a dirty word, and it's not this creepy thing. Networking is just being curious about what other people do for a career. I don't want you going out and asking people to help you find a job. I want you to go out and talk to people about what's it like to work at Garmin. What do you like? What is your career trajectory been? Within your career, what do you think your next steps are going to be? Be curious about them is the best way to start networking. You'll learn so much about organizations, about career paths, about professions, that it just makes you that much stronger when you get that interview. You know lots and lots and lots. You know lots about that company. You know a lot about what's important to them, what some of their opportunities are and some of their challenges, because you've been talking to people about just those sort of things. So when you're networking, I always think of it as, it's not about me, it's about them. So when I start these conversations, it's me being curious about them. It's not me trying to get my story across. And you'll find that the people love to talk about themselves, and people love to talk about their jobs and their industries. And so go to LinkedIn, go to the alumni page, find somebody who works at your dream company, and just send them an email and see if they've got a half an hour to set up a Zoom call and chat with you about their job. And then what you'll find is, in the course of the conversation, they'll say, so what are you interested in doing? What are some of your goals? And then you can weave in a little bit of that, but then you'll find that people want to help. And so at the end of a conversation, people might say, I think you'd be great working here. Or, we were just in a meeting and we were talking about, we were going to have to hire somebody to replace somebody who recently left. And, you should talk to the manager of that department. I'll make an introduction. And that's how jobs are found. It's not through the online applications. It's through these conversations. And that's why I really think this is where you should be spending your time. So my final message, tip on thinking strategically is thinking about the message of you, the brand of you. And I think this is particularly important if you're laid off, fired, or furloughed, because you're probably not feeling great. And you need to think about what you're going to say when somebody says, well, why did you get laid off? Because you know what, they're going to ask. It's a big old company. They didn't lay off everybody. Why you? And that's a tough one. And the thing is, you're probably asking the same thing, like, why me? And you can't simply say, well, it was really unfair. But so think, what is your answer to that? And that's something that takes a little bit of soul searching. Find your answer, make sure it's a positive in the end answer, and believe it. And you tell yourself this story so often you believe it. So was your project eliminated? You can say, it's time of a pandemic and it was a really tough decision for the university, and they were cutting because we've had layoffs. So they were cutting projects and programs that had the least impact on student academic success. And my position, which was a great project, but it wasn't 100% focused on that. And, I could really understand that if the university had to cut someplace, it's probably something that perhaps wasn't okay. So, you're basically saying it wasn't because I was incompetent. It wasn't because I wasn't doing my job. It was because it was in the best interest of the overall health of the organization. And I understand that. So you're taking some of the emotion out of it. You're taking a lot of the judgment that you might be feeling towards yourself out of it. You have to come up with whatever your answer is. And it has to be something that was for the greater good of the organization, something relatively positive, and then really work on believing it. And I know that this can be tough when you're unemployed because you feel a lot of hurt that you were let go, that your position or your project was cut. So you kind of have to work through the hurt so that you can believe the relatively positive message.
Hey, Tess.
Yeah, questions?
Sorry, we have a quick question, and I think you're actually leading into it. Someone asked, they find it hard to find the right person to network with, or their contact information. What tips do you have?
Oh yeah. Okay. So here's my, I'm going to stop
Got a good
sharing.
segue into your next slide.
Well, okay, because my next slide is network.
Right.
something, and network. So this is, I'm a broken record on this, but it's so true. And I'm actually an introvert, so the idea of actually reaching out to strangers is fairly abhorrent to me. And yet I'm telling you, this is the way to find a job. So I'm going to stop sharing my oh so lovely PowerPoint, and I'm going to find my LinkedIn page, and I'm going to share that with you because I love LinkedIn. All right, so let's see if I can share that now. Screen 2. Okay. So LinkedIn, oh my goodness, if you aren't on LinkedIn, you need to be on LinkedIn. So in the search box, type in University of Missouri, Kansas City, it takes you to this page. And then you'll see here this really wonderful, magical tab called Alumni, because alumni are wonderful and magical. And it brings you to this sorting tool. So say I'm in Kansas City, and I want to meet some people in Kansas City. So I'm going to click on that bar, which just gives me the 38,552 UMKC alums on LinkedIn who live in Kansas City. And then here are some companies that they work for. But I'm going to go to the next page because I'm more interested in what they do. So maybe I'm interested in research. I'll go research. Because I'm in research and that's the sort of position that I'm looking for. And so I want to see where are our alumni. And here then is where they work. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wow, maybe Catalent Pharma, I've heard of them. They seem like they're a good company. I've done a little research. So then down here are all of the UMKC alumni who work in research at Catalent in Kansas City. And now I can start looking at their job titles and finding something that maybe is pretty closely aligned to what I'm interested in doing. And then, so maybe I'm looking at scientist and I'm a biology, major, and so I'm going to click on that. Click on the picture. So here's a UMKC alum. I check out when she graduated. She got she got her PhD and her master's here in biology, 14 and 17, so pretty recent. I can see what she studied. I can see what her career is like. And so then maybe I send a quick message by hitting message and saying, I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I'm at kind of a crossroads. I'm really interested in learning more about different types of careers and different companies. I was wondering if you had a half an hour that we could talk. I'd love to hear about your career. And then see what happens. Send it off. And the thing of it is, worst case scenario. They say nothing. That is the worst case scenario. It's just they silent. Okay, I'd ping them one more time at some point, maybe a week later, and just really still continue to be interested in chatting with you about your experience at Catalent. Love to set up a time to chat for 30 minutes. And if you hear nothing after that, then I move on to the next one. But what you'll find is that you'll probably get more responses than you think. And then just have a conversation. I would set it up via Zoom. We're not really doing coffee these days, but I would set it up via Zoom so that you can virtually look them in the eye, share facial expressions one way or the other, and have a little bit more of a connection. And then, yeah.
Sorry. There's
Yeah.
a follow-up question. If they're interested in a certain company, but they don't see any alumni there, how do you track
Oh.
down the right person to connect?
Well, then again, LinkedIn is your best friend. So maybe I don't know anybody. I can't find any alumni. So then I type in Catalent because they seem like they're a cool company. I can't type. Catalent Pharma Solutions. Oh, am I still an alumni? No, no. You can do largely the same with, it's much the same process. The only thing is they're not necessarily alumni. So I can still though do a bit of a sort. I can then look at titles, or I could even, maybe I want to work in marketing at Catalent. So you can, let's see marketing, but everybody has marketing. And yeah, so then it gets narrowed down. You pick the titles that might seem interesting to you, and it's really the same process. It's a little nicer if you've got that connection because you both went to the same school, but it's not necessary. Again, you can just say, yeah, I've been watching Catalent, a really interesting company to me. In my research, I came across your profile on LinkedIn. It seems like perhaps you have an interesting position. I'd love to talk to you about, what your career progression has been. What do you think your next steps would be? Again, it's all about them and being curious, but be bold. So it's a cold call, so you don't know them. Again, worst case scenario, they don't respond. Nobody's going to write back and say, why the heck are you bothering me? If they don't want to talk to you, they just won't say anything and they'll let it go. So, now's the time to be bold because you got nothing to lose. So, so when I say network, I love LinkedIn because it's an easy way to find individuals who work at the companies that you might be interested in. On the other hand, maybe you don't know what companies are out there. So you could actually do a search of marketing. You can type in marketing and pharmaceuticals and see what comes up. So if I click on now I'm just searching people's profiles. I can say pharmaceuticals marketing. I can, if I only want to talk to people in Kansas City, I can click on location and type in my location. And now I'm seeing, this person's at Teva, Janssen. So then that might help me identify what companies might be hiring for marketing in the pharmaceutical industry. I love LinkedIn. Love, love, love it. So my last slide was that one that said network, network, network. And then the other piece of that is tailor every resume. And I cannot say that one enough. When you are, at some point, you're going to have to fill in those online applications. Maybe you haven't been able to find somebody, but you still want to apply for a job. Your best way to get through that process and get an interview is to tailor your resume. And what we have right now is applicant tracking systems. I don't know if you've heard of them. It's this whole process by which they manage, posting a job and having people apply and getting them scheduled for interviews. But one step of that applicant tracking system is they'll apply a software program to scan your resume to see how good a fit you are for the job. And so they're looking at keywords and skills that you identify on your resume to see if they match what they're looking for, and they give you a score. And so if you're a 20% match, you're never going to talk to a human being about that job. If you're an 80 or 90% match, there's a good chance that somebody will call you to set up an interview. And oftentimes what that percentage matches is not an indication of how well qualified or not qualified you are for the job. It's simply an indication of how well you've tailored your resume to that specific job. And we have a tool that we subscribe to that you can have access to. It's called JobScan. I love it. If you'll give me a moment, I'll pull this up and share my screen so you can see this also. And share. So it's a website. You'll log in. If you have your UMKC email and it's still good, log in with your UMKC email, because you'll automatically be bumped to the premium version. And so what you'll do is go in. So this is my account. I'm going to show you my husband's example from a couple years ago that we did this. It's a really simple process. So you can either upload your resume or cut and paste your resume into one side, and then you cut and paste the job description on the other side, and you hit scan, or in this case rescan, and then it'll tell you how good your resume was in terms of matching the key points of this job. So for this position, my husband was in fact like a perfect match for this position. I mean, just 99% perfect. And yet his resume only indicates that maybe he's a 50-50 shot. So probably for a company like this, he would never get a call. And so the nice thing about JobScan is it doesn't just say, too bad, so sad, your resume is just a 50% match. It actually tells you exactly what you need to do to improve that score. And you'd be surprised. So many times it's simple things that it's just like, oh, I just never thought to do that. So it'll tell you what keywords and skills you're missing, if your job is a good match, and how you might want to think about tinkering with your job titles just a little bit, or getting some of those words in to make sure that you're seen as a good match. If your resume is too long or too short, it'll tell you things like that. But here are some of the words, the key words that it'll tell you if you're missing or not missing based on that job description. So in this case, you look at things like strategic direction is probably something he should have had on his resume, because it's a predicted skill that they'd want. Experience using R, which is a data language. Using the word brand. He's done a lot of brand work. He should have that on his resume. Identifying Facebook, distribution, digital video, all of these are things that they're in the job description, but he doesn't mention it in his resume. So then you can go over to this power edit, and this is what I love about JobScan. So, okay, so I'm thinking I need to add brand to my resume, and so I can say, develop. My score is 50%. I can just type in, somewhere relevant. It has to be relevant, but develop brand partnerships. And it recalculates, and now I'm at 53%. So then I go to Facebook. So maybe I say in here, I did something with social media. You can't see it, but say, education, whatever. So say I want to do something via Facebook because, I did that in my job. I just didn't think to mention it. So now I'm at 56%. So distribution, and you just go on and you keep adding every one of these things, and pretty soon you're at 80% or 90%. And that's how you can improve your chances of getting through these applicant tracking systems. So I love this. It's not telling you should lie, but it does sort of get you thinking and sparking like, I've worked with Facebook. We do social media posts all the time on Facebook, but I never thought to put it on my resume. And this is just a reminder, you should think of a way to talk about it. So really, really wonderful tool.
Hey, Tess.
Yep.
Got a quick question about resume formatting. Thoughts on a modern formatted resume versus traditionally formatted, a traditional, I guess, format resume.
Go traditional, go a little bit on the blah side. Do not go for graphics, do not go for infographics, do not go for funky elements. And actually the JobScan can kind of help you out with that too. What happens is when you use any of those sort of, they make it prettier, they make it nicer looking. I'll grant you that, but oftentimes they don't get read by applicant tracking systems very well. And so it comes out as garbage and just weird symbols and all of that. When it gets uploaded into these applicant tracking systems, they can't read it. And so you basically are disqualifying yourself by doing it. Just go simple, not very exciting. Hold on, I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's see if I can find. Maybe I don't have an example right here at my fingertips, but I do. So I'll show you my own resume. Let's see. So you can see here it's, oh, you can't see it yet. It's pretty simple formatting. It's just doesn't have a lot of color or pizzazz. But this will get read by an applicant tracking system pretty well. And that's really what you want, is to be able to get through the applicant tracking systems. The other thing is that this is a pretty good utilization of space. And when you think that your resume should be one page if you're sort of in the 5 to 7 years post-graduation stage of your career, and 2 pages for anything else, you need to get a lot of good information on 2 pages. And so this is pretty good utilization of pages, gives me lots of opportunities to get those keywords and phrases in. Whereas sometimes, if you get the things that have like a big color bar over here and some infographic-y things, you really don't have a lot of room left to get good information onto that resume. So, and the third thing, so the first thing is get through the applicant tracking system. The second thing is good utilization of space. The third thing is a little bit on the blah side is what the recruiters want to see. They want the information to be exactly where they expect it. They don't want to have to what do you mean with that infographic? Or where did you put your education? They want to be able to scan it quickly and find the information. And so that's why that very basic format is really the best, even though it's not very exciting. Any other questions, Erin?
I think that has covered it. One thing, kind of going back to what we said, I'll turn my video on real quick, that we talked about yesterday, if you weren't involved with our session yesterday. Use our office also. If you're having a difficult time finding, you found a job that you think is a perfect fit for you, but you would like to network and you haven't quite found the right person on LinkedIn, reach out to our office. It's more than likely that we have a good contact with that organization. And if not, we can do a search in Handshake as well. Sometimes contact information isn't always listed in Handshake to students and alumni, but we can do that initial outreach to that employer on your behalf as well. We can't do that as much with actually current students. So it's great that we can be a little bit more direct with that outreach with alumni. So again, use our office, both the Block Career Center and UMKC Career Services.
And do, if you're having a hard time identifying companies, or, you know, if you're thinking more, here are the skills and that I know I'm good at, but I don't know who would be interested in hiring that, that's another one. Reach out to us. We actually have access to a few databases that, and one that we've just recently acquired, that really allows us to look at the market, look to see what companies, organizations specifically have been hiring for a specific role, what the salary ranges are. So we can kind of dig into that for you. It's not something, the way our license is set, it's not something that we can make, you know, just put on our website and have you go and search it. But always happy. If you tell me what you're interested in, I'm always happy to log into that with our accountant and find that information for you. You're just never alone in this process. That's what we're here for, and we're free. And you know, let us take some of the stress off of it for you.
I haven't seen any other questions. Thank you, Tess, for facilitating this. It was incredibly helpful. Oh, someone just posted something. She's a nurse practitioner and unfortunately was laid off in May. And now she's, okay, and actually Tess talked about this yesterday. She's a little bit older, Tess, and wants to know how far back in her work experience should she go?
On your resume, 10, 15 years. So, and this is the cold, cruel reality of it. And it annoys me too, because as I mentioned yesterday, I'm in my 50s and I don't think that I'm done. I don't think that I offer nothing at this point. But especially if you're a female, on my resume, I wouldn't have it look like I was much older than 45. So I would only go back far enough to really kind of put me in that time range as much as possible. And sometimes you can't avoid that. But you don't want to be disqualified just because of your age before they've even had a chance to meet you. And they will. I mean, it's been proven over and over again. So, but it's also a thing where I would say just applying online is not going to be very successful. This is, again, where you're going to need to go out and talk to people, let them know that you're looking, and let them get to know you and see the value of your experience and see that, you know, you're still energetic and enthusiastic and excited about your profession and what you can do, you know, because here's what the misconception is that as we get older, we're really more concerned about retirement and we're not going to work as hard and we haven't kept up on things and, you know, we don't know technology. And yet, so as a woman who's about to be 58, I love gadgets. I love my profession. I stay on top of it completely. I like to think that I'm pretty high energy. I'm not a number. You're not a number, but too often they just see the number. So network, talk to people, show your enthusiasm, and it probably, sadly, is going to take a little bit longer to find something, but keep at it, and again, just talk to people, because it's the face-to-face connections that are going to help you out.
And Tess, do you need to list years for when they graduated, when they got their degrees?
Nope. For college education, because that'll date you, just list the school, list the degree that you received, but just leave the dates off.
Yeah.
And there's
And
nothing that says that you have to include every job you've ever had on your resume. Only include the last 10, maybe 15 years. And then you can always talk about, you know, your previous work experience. But for most of us, the things that are most recent are also most relevant. And so that's really all you need to focus on your resume. Your resume isn't a history, it's a marketing tool. So that's just something you got to get your head around. This is not a history of everything I've done. It's a marketing tool to get me the job that I want.
Yeah. And I have to agree with Tess. Tess loves technology, and she's more up to speed with it than I am.
Gadget nerd.
Yeah. So she's always telling me about the latest gadget and gizmo that she's bought for her house or personally. So it's definitely that she does not fall into that category or that stereotype. I did want to point out that as Tess was talking about some different links or resources, I tried to share them in the chat as well. So I included a link to the Kansas City Business Journal Book of List. Normally you can, or usually, and you should be able to see, I believe, the top 10 of each list in the free version. If you would like to go beyond that, like Tess said, we can help you access the full list. And then I also included the link to the KCADC website, as well as to JobScan. You do need to have a UMKC email address to utilize JobScan, and Katie Woody from the Alumni Association has put a link in there to, if you do not have a UMKC email, how to get one created for you or access your old one.
And they do have a free version of JobScan, but it doesn't have that feature where you can see how your score goes up when you type in their suggestions. So you want the premium version. So it's worth it to get the UMKC email if you haven't kept that up.
Yeah. And there's a few people that have kind of some specific situational specific questions, and I encourage you to set up an appointment with one of our career coaches or with Tess to chat about those in a little bit more depth. Yeah, I think some of it's just kind of specific experiences that they've had that they would like to chat about. So definitely, if you can set up an appointment, it can be either phone or Zoom, whatever you're most comfortable with. We are still working virtually. Oh, someone did ask Tess, do you recommend getting the premium version on LinkedIn if you're job seeking?
Oh, it's expensive. For a lot of I haven't checked it recently, but oftentimes they'll give 1 month free. If you sign up for the 1 month free, make sure to mark on your calendar when it will expire so that you do not get charged. It's like $50 a month these days for the premium version. I will say it does give you some pretty good information when you are using the premium version. So it might be helpful and worthwhile while you're actively job searching. I know we only have 10 minutes. I have the premium version because I use it so much for work. I'll show you what it is that you get and you can kind of decide. Let me see if I can pull this up. Because it does have some good features. So if I look at jobs, if you're with the premium version, it'll actually tell me where I would be one of the top candidates. So, you know, I'd be here for UMSL, it says I would be in the top 25% of 10 candidates. Here, top 25% of 40 candidates, which is actually a pretty nice feature. Because if you're applying for a job and it's got 500 people applying for it, and I'm not showing up as being in one of the top candidates, it's probably not worth my time and effort. Whereas if it says that I am in the top 25%, let's see if I can pull this up. it'll give me some good information. It'll say I'm in the top 25%. Here's how I stack up. You know, my current role is a good fit. My past experience is a pretty good fit. Skills are a pretty good fit. These are some of the traits that they're looking for. The ones that are grayed out are the ones that in my LinkedIn profile, it says that I say I'm a good at these things. These are the things I don't mention, but they think, you know, other candidates are talking about that. So I might go back then and fix my profile by adding these. It'll tell me, you know, is my degree kind of in running with the other people who are applying? So it's some really good information. But if you're not actively looking, $50 a month is a lot of money to be spending on this. Now, if you are actively looking, you know, 1 month free and maybe paying for 1 month beyond is maybe a decent investment. So you decide.
Great. I think that concludes everything. Like I said, there are a couple of questions in there, but I recommend you reach out and we can kind of chat through your situation specifically. Just as a plug for the rest of our programming, tomorrow.
Yoga tomorrow.
Yes, yoga tomorrow. That is a separate, I believe, registration link. And that is still all on the Alumni Association's website. I'm not sure if Katie is still on, if she can throw that on here. And then Thursday, Tess will be back again and talking about how to position yourself for career advancement or switching industries or companies in a virtual space on Thursday. And then on Friday, myself and a colleague will be talking about getting involved with our office in a volunteer perspective. So if you would like to give back and work with students from your academic unit or support your organization through their hiring efforts and volunteering in that role to be part of their recruiting team, we'll be talking about that on Friday. And Katie just added the yoga link to the chat. But thank you all for attending. Tess, thank you for presenting as well. And if any of you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Please give us a call.
Yes.